Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Gabby and today I'm going to be doing a very exciting video, and that is my thriller recommendations video part 5. Yes, I have made 4 previous thriller recommendation videos. All the links for those will be in the description, but I really love doing this video every October because I do read a lot of thrillers in the year. Usually by this point of the year I do have a lot of thriller recommendations for you. I actually did do this video in April this year because that was like the 6-month point after the last October, and I realized I had enough thrillers to recommend you more thrillers then. So this is the 5th one within 4 years. Last time I did these thriller recommendation videos, Gwen did a video reading all of the recommendations off of these lists, made this video called Can We Trust Gabby Reads, and it was a very intense experience to watch that video, and it was just so crazy and it was a lot of fun. So I'll link her video in the description if you want to see what I'm talking about. But it made me realize that, like, holy crap, people might actually be reading these recommendations, and like that is freaking mind-blowing to me. I have about 11 thrillers that I wanted to recommend to you today. Some of them, like the first 3, are going to be my favorite thrillers that I've read this year so far, and then as we get deeper into the recommendations, I'm going to recommend you some that I really enjoyed but I had some issues with, and so I'll let you know about that. I'm really excited about this, so let's get to it. And if you've been watching a lot of my like very previous videos, then you're probably going to see a lot of these books overlap from my previous videos because these are some of my favorite thrillers of the year, so I'm going to be talking about them a lot, and I'm sorry. First one that I want to recommend to you is probably my favorite thriller of 2019 so far, and that is The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware. This is actually the only Ruth Ware book that I have enjoyed so far of all of them that I've read. This one is like everything that I love in a thriller. So this girl finds an ad to be a nanny for this family that's like a super rich family, and they're living in this really smart house, but the smart house seems like it might be a little bit haunted or something because the lights keep coming on by themselves and the music turns on by itself, and in the room that she's staying in, she swears she can like hear something above her like pacing at night. Like, it's just very, very spooky and very intense. And at the beginning of this book, we find out that one of the kids that she was nannying for has been killed, and she's writing to a lawyer saying, please help me defend myself because I didn't do it, and they're all saying that I did it. And so like we get to follow backwards in time to see like her experience nannying these kids, and it's just the best. Like, this book is just so spooky and it's so atmospheric, and I could not stop reading it. Like, I finished this whole book within a day because I could just not put it down, and it's just my favorite thriller that I've read so far this year. Like, it's just really, really great. Highly, highly recommend it. Another one of my favorite thrillers so far this year is Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. I've always really enjoyed Riley Sager's thrillers, but this one is by far my favorite from him. This one also has like a very spooky setting to it, which is I guess like my thing in thrillers. Like, I just love spooky setting thrillers. This one follows this girl who's going to be living in this apartment building in New York City called the Bartholomew. The Bartholomew has this like crazy interesting history of people getting killed at this place in the past, and there's this mystery around this building. Like, no one can live there unless you're selected to live there, and this girl is getting paid to live in this building. Like, it's very weird. And then she has this fear that this building might be cursed or like haunted because some weird shit is happening in this building that can't be explained, and these girls that have been living in this building before her are going missing. This book was just loads of fun for me. It was very atmospheric, very spooky and weird, and the plot twists at the end I thought were really, really great, and it's definitely one of my favorite thrillers of the year. Highly recommend. The third book that's one of my favorite thrillers of the year so far is The Silent Patient by Alex Michael Ides. This one follows this guy who's a psychotherapist. He's going to be talking to this girl named Alicia, who seemed to be a perfectly normal woman who one day shot her husband in the face like 5 times, and ever since the incident she hasn't spoken a word, and so he's going to be going into the mental hospital to like try and talk to her and figure out like what exactly happened and what's going on. And this book was really great. I love the setting of the mental hospital in this book because it makes it very like creepy and disturbing. This book has one of the best plot twists of the year, probably my favorite plot twist actually in a book this whole year. Like, the plot twist is so freaking good, and I didn't see it coming. I don't know why. Like, oh my god. And the hype is real for this one. Like, this one is one of the best thrillers of the year. Do not skip it. Another one of my favorite thrillers this year that's also kind of like thriller slash sci-fi is The Passengers by John Mars. And the only reason why this one is kind of sci-fi is because it takes place in a somewhat near future where we have self-driving cars. In this book, we're following 8 people who are in their self-driving cars when the doors lock and a voice comes over the speaker speaker that says you are going to die, and the car changes direction and it's out of their control. And then all 8 of these people are having their like live reactions from the car being broadcast to the entire world. The hacker, like the person that's taken over these cars, is asking the public like, who should we kill first? It's crazy. It's honestly like an episode of Black Mirror. Like, it just feels very Black Mirror to me, but it's so crazy because it really has a lot to say about how we make like quick judgments about people without really knowing their full stories. Oh my god, it's just so good. Like, this book is a non-stop thrill ride from beginning to the end, and this book is probably the most thriller out of all of them, because it's like, it's so thrilling and it's just so intense. The next one I wanted to recommend to you is The Chalk Man by C.J. Tudor, and this one is a thriller that takes place half in the 1980s and then half in 2016. And so in the 1980s, we're following this group of boys who were like about 13 or so, I want to say. They communicate with each other using these little chalkmen symbols, and one day they find their chalkmen symbols and it leads them to a body in the woods that's like dismembered and shit, like body parts are everywhere, and they get all freaked out. And then this book takes place 30 years into the future in 2016, when the people from that incident are coming back into town and they're kind of trying to figure out like what exactly happened there and like what this whole chalkman situation's about. This book was really good. I feel like it was very creepy and spooky, and it had this great atmosphere throughout the whole book. This book also did have a couple of plot twists that I didn't see coming. I just thought it was really good. Like, it wasn't like one of my favorite thrillers ever, but like it was still really good. The next 2 books that I wanted to recommend are actually both by Robin Harding. The first one is The Arrangement, and this is a book that I ended up giving 3 stars to. I thought it could have been a lot better. I do still think it's an interesting thriller and it might be worth reading for you. It's about this girl living in New York City who's from Washington. She is in a very, very desperate financial situation, so she ends up getting a sugar daddy. From there, things kind of like downward spiral for her, and we get to kind of follow the thrilling things that happen to her after she gets a sugar daddy. I will say, like, this book is still very interesting. I just would have liked to see the sugar daddy aspects of this book used more, but I still think that this is a really like entertaining thriller, and I still think it's something that's worth your time. The other book by Robin Harding that I just read at the beginning of this month is Her Pretty Face. This book, Her Pretty Face, kind of reminded me of like Big Little Lies meets A Simple Favor, but I love the fact in this book that we're following like 2 separate timelines. So one of these timelines takes place in the 90s when this girl went missing and you're trying to figure out what happened to her, and then the other timeline takes place in the present day between these 2 moms who become like very fast friends, and then their sons become friends. But then there's some questionable things about both of the women's past. I feel like, though, for somebody that reads thrillers very often, I feel like you're gonna see a lot of these plot twists coming, because I personally saw a lot of the plot twists coming, which is why this one also ended up kind of being like a 3-star book for me. But I do really enjoy Robin Harding's writing, so I can really see myself liking this author a lot more in the future with her books. But for these 2 books that I'm recommending to you from her, like, they're good, but for the average thriller reader, like if you read a lot of thrillers, then you're probably going to see a lot of these plot twists coming. But if you're just getting started into thrillers, then maybe these would be like good starter books. Alright, another thriller that I would recommend is 13 by Steve Kavanagh. This one is not one that I would usually recommend because this one is like a legal thriller. This book, honestly, it's something I didn't really think I would like, but it kind of reminded me of like The Silence of the Lambs, because in this book, we're following from the point of view of a serial killer, but then we're also simultaneously following from the point of view of this lawyer, which is kind of what makes this book feel more like a legal thriller. So in this book, the thing that I found so interesting is that the serial killer isn't on the trial, he's on the jury. And it's about this crazy ass serial killer who gets himself on the jury for one of his murders that he did. But this case in particular is like very fascinating to me because the guy that's being accused of murder is this huge movie star, and he's being accused of murdering his wife and this guy that she was like having an affair with. It's just very fascinating. Like, this book definitely isn't going to be for everyone, and I don't usually like legal thrillers, but for some reason this one I just really vibed with, probably because it was also following from the point of view of a serial killer, so it's just really interesting still. But yeah, I enjoyed this book. I had a good time reading this. And these last 3 books that are on this recommendation list are going to be books that are thrillers, but they're also partially another genre too. So the first one is going to be Imaginary Friend by Stephen Chbosky. This book is half thriller, half horror novel. It's probably more horror novel, but I feel like it applies to fans of thrillers. And I actually just made an entire reading vlog video dedicated to this book because I just very recently read this, but I do feel like this is like the perfect like spooky horror thriller kind of book that you're looking for at this time of year probably. Even though I was like massively disappointed by like the last 200 pages of this 700 page book, I would still really recommend it because the first 500 pages of this book is some of the best shit that I've read all year. And if you didn't know anything about this book, it basically follows from the point of view of this little boy Christopher who's 7 years old and his mom Kate. It goes like back and forth between their points of views, and he goes missing in the woods for 6 days. And then when he's eventually found, some weird shit starts happening in their lives, and this book involves a lot of really spooky things like the woods and deers and tree houses, and just it's a really great time, and I highly recommend it. Another thriller that I highly recommend is Miracle Creek by Angie Kim, and this one is actually considered a literary courtroom thriller. I love that description of this book because I feel like it describes it so accurately, because it does have a thriller vibe to it, but it also kind of reads like literary fiction, and it is set kind of in a courtroom setting. So if you don't typically like thrillers that are set in a courtroom setting, then I wouldn't really recommend this. But I personally also am not a huge fan of like courtroom settings either, but this book was just absolutely fascinating. And I feel like that's because of the literary fiction feel to it and the thriller feel to it. So if you like literary fiction and thrillers, then I definitely do recommend you check this one out. This book is basically about this 8-year-old autistic boy who dies in this fire that may or may have not been an accident, and his mother is being accused of killing him. Then we also follow from the point of view of these immigrants who are living in the United States who own this place where the fire took place. And it's just a very, very beautiful story, but it's also very thrilling because you're trying to figure out if this mom killed her 8-year-old autistic son. Like, it's just very crazy. And the last book that I have on this list is Recursion by Blake Crouch, and this book is half sci-fi, half thriller. It takes place in a very like futuristic world, but we follow from the point of view of a detective, and then we also follow from the point of view of a scientist. It's legitimately like half of it feels like thriller vibes, and then the other half of it is very heavy sci-fi. So we follow the detective as he's trying to figure out what's going on with these people, because a bunch of people are reporting this thing called false memory syndrome. So these people are saying that they're remembering things that they've never experienced, and like they're getting these memories of like this son that they never had, or like these very confusing false memories. And so people are like killing themselves because of it, and people are like going insane. So we follow from the point of view of the detective as he's trying to figure out like what exactly is happening to all these people. And then we also follow from the point of view of the scientist who is kind of responsible for what's going on. Yes, this book is probably a little bit more sci-fi than it is thriller, but it still feels very thriller because we're following from the point of view of this detective. And I typically don't like thrillers that follow from the point of view of a detective, but I think because I was so interested in the mystery of this and the sci-fi in this, that it just made it like such a fascinating book for me. I do feel like though that this is another one of those books that really drops the ball towards the end. Like, I got very annoyed with this book towards the end, but the beginning of this book is just so freaking good that I can't not recommend it to you, and I still definitely think it's worth a read. Like, this book is so freaking good, and Blake Crouch is just like an incredible writer in general. So highly recommend this one. So those are all of the thriller recommendations that I have for you today. Let me know what your thoughts are on any of these thrillers, if you have read them or if you're planning on reading them soon. Let me know, and I'm really excited. I haven't even gotten really to like my stack of thrillers that I'm wanting to read for myself in October, but I already realized like I have 11 thrillers that I can recommend already, so I figured I would just make this video now, and who knows, maybe by April next year I'll have enough books that I've read for another thriller recommendation video. But if not, then I will see you next October with another thriller recommendation video. I don't know why, I just feel like these recommendation videos need to come out in October because like that's thriller season, you know? And as usual, if you have any other thriller recommendations for me that you think I would really like based off of these books, then let me know, because I would love to check those out. And yeah, I think that's about it. So thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I will see you soon with a new video.